Hi Titans, this presentation is meant to accompany Chapter 13 on the moral status of animals in the Living Ethics book. So one thing you have probably noticed that has changed in this section of the book is Russ has a just the facts section and then he has arguments. So we just start with why do we care about how animals are treated, and here are some reasons. We eat a lot of animals for food. This is an astonishing statistic. The average is 200 pounds of meat per person per year. And we know, most of us anyway, that the conditions in which animals are raised in factory farms are pretty awful, cruel, unsanitary, etc. In 2016, 9% of US citizens claimed to be strictly or mostly vegan or vegetarian. That's quite a difference, right? If you've ever tried to be vegan, if you've ever been vegetarian and tried to be vegan or just gone to veganism, you know how difficult it is. But okay, Russ. So this slide is just talking about the ways that animals are used and killed in research labs. I had a student one time do a presentation on this topic, and he said that, I think it's in the US, it might be the UK, but rodents and birds are not classified as animals, and so they can be basically used in any capacity because it's not considered cruelty to animals because they don't consider them animals. Of course they are animals, but that's another subject, right? There are benefits to experimenting on animals, and these are some of the things that research has helped us with. And there are, or there should be, regulations in place to make sure that the animals are not completely abused and mistreated. And then, like I said, he lays out all the facts and then he has an argument analysis. So if you had a friend, let's say you're a vegetarian and your friend eats meat, and you ask your friend, why do you eat meat? And they say, well, I mean, animals eat other animals and we're animals, so what's the problem? So that's the way the argument goes. If animals kill other animals, then it's morally okay for humans to kill animals. And it's true that animals do kill other animals, so therefore it's morally okay for humans to kill animals. So let's look at this a little closer. Animals kill other animals. And hidden in there is, if animals kill other animals, then it's morally okay for humans to kill animals. But there is a difference. It's not the same, because animals that kill other animals have no choice. They just work off of instinct, whereas we make deliberate, rational choices about what we do. In the animal world, a carnivore's survival depends on eating other animals, but ours does not. We don't have to eat animals to live. Also, why are we looking at animals as examples of how we should live? Also, by the way, the animals that we routinely eat are not carnivores anyway. Okay, here's a power argument. If we are powerful to control an animal's behavior and the conditions under which it lives, then we are morally allowed to exercise that control. This is sort of the might makes right argument. We are powerful enough to control an animal's behavior and the conditions under which it lives. Therefore, we are morally allowed to control an animal's behavior and the conditions under which it lives. Okay, so premise one is deeply troubling. Might does not make right. So if you accept the whole argument stemming from premise one, It's a valid argument. Obviously, it's a valid argument, but the first premise is a little disturbing. I mean, what if there were a situation where, just imagine yourself, you can imagine a Walking Dead situation or a post-apocalyptic situation, or just, I don't know, a situation at work where that like somebody is your superior and they're just being an a-hole to you because they can. That's not all right. Okay, here's the dependency argument. If animals depend for their existence or their sustenance on humans, then humans have a right to treat those animals in any way that best suits human interests. Really? That doesn't make sense. Like, what about little babies, right? We don't treat babies in any way that best suits our own interests. So why would we do that with animals? Just because somebody depends on you doesn't mean that you can abuse them or do it what you will to them. The hypocrisy argument. People who act in morally inconsistent ways are hypocrites and so have flawed characters. Ethical vegetarians and vegans act in morally inconsistent ways. Therefore, ethical vegetarians and vegans are hypocrites. So he's making a distinction here between, like, let's say somebody had to be a vegetarian or a vegan for medical reasons or something. These are people who make the choice to intentionally be vegetarian or vegan. But let's say your friend is a vegan, but she cheats on her boyfriend. And she's telling you, you should be a vegan. And you're like, I'm not going to follow your example because you're highly immoral when it comes to personal relationships. I think Russ takes a really interesting tack here. If we look at Huckleberry Finn from the book Huckleberry Finn, we find that he is a hypocrite, but he is highly moral. Why is he a hypocrite? Because he is white, he's racist, because he's been brought up in a racist society, but yet he helps his friend Jim, who is black. That's hypocritical. He's not being consistent with his morality, but in the end, his morality is better than a lot of the other people in the novel. Also, sometimes the people say, oh, you care about animals, but you don't care about people, so, your argument is ridiculous. And Russ says, well, first of all, you don't know that that's true. They could be very concerned about human injustices, but also, you can't fight out every battle, and it's fair to choose the one that you want to prioritize and give your attention to. And he says at worst, or at best, this is an ad hominem attack, ad hominem to the man or to the person. So you're basically pointing to the person's character as evidence for why you should disagree with their argument, but that's a fallacy, as we saw in the first weeks of the course. Okay, this one is kind of similar to the might makes right argument, the power argument. And Russ says the problem here is with this premise. Just because we feel more moral attachment to humans doesn't mean that we can do whatever the hell we want with animals. So it's very similar to that power argument, and he just uses the example again of a baby. Like if you have a baby and that baby, you feel very attached to that baby, that doesn't mean that you can do whatever you want. You can't perform, research experiments on the baby. Okay, the argument from marginal cases is the one that I really want to talk about. That one's a super important one, and it's the one that most people point to when they're talking about the rights of animals. But in order to get there, let's look at this argument first. So this argument says animals have moral rights. Humans have moral rights. Animals lack moral rights. Those with moral rights are morally permitted to treat beings without moral rights in whatever way the rights holder thinks is best. Therefore, blah, 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 blah. Okay, now most of us are going to accept number one. Humans have moral rights and animals lack moral rights. But why are we saying that automatically? Now you might say, well, in order to have rights, you need to be able to, this is on page 214, enter into reciprocal agreements or stand up for oneself or think about one's future in complex ways or conform one's behavior to principles one freely and rationally endorses. And animals can't do any of those things. But neither can babies or some Alzheimer's patients, people in a coma, people who are cognitively disabled, etc. But we don't want to deny all of those people rights just because they can't do this kind of thing. So if you go, okay, fine. Not all human beings do have moral rights, but look at premise 3. If that's true, then the rights argument would morally allow us to treat babies, Alzheimer's patients, cognitively disabled people, etc. in any way that we want. And if you don't like that, then you have 3 choices, Russ says. So first you could reject premise 2 and argue that animals do have moral rights. Or you could reject premise 3 and argue that there are limits to the treatment of those who lack rights. Or you could accept all premises of the rights argument but challenge the assumption that he's been using in his analysis of the argument, and that assumption is that possessing moral rights comes as a result of satisfying the conditions in 1, 2, 3, 4. But maybe there's a 5 that's not on the slide, right? And if that's true, if rights come from some other place than satisfying these conditions, then we need to look at the argument from marginal cases. Okay, so this is the biggie. Marginal is an unfortunate word because it is meant to talk about people who are on the margins, people who are, again, babies, cognitively disabled, Alzheimer's patients, etc. Marginal isn't the best word, but it's the one that we're using. So if it's immoral to kill and eat, quote, marginal human beings, or to painfully experiment on them, then it is immoral to treat non-human animals this way. And it's almost always immoral to kill and eat, quote, marginal human beings, and to painfully experiment on them. Therefore, it is almost always immoral to kill and eat animals and to painfully experiment on them. So these are 3 gambits that people employ to explain why you can do some things to animals that you can't do to humans. One is that God made us that way, but that's a theological argument, not a philosophical one. Another one is that humans are just better than animals, but that doesn't really tell us anything. You're just repeating what we asked you to show us, which is, why are we the best? And if you say, well, because we are the best, that's not an argument. Also, you could say, yes, there are marginal human beings in our population, but as a species, we are superior to animals. But Russ says, well, I mean, what if everybody in your family were a criminal? It wouldn't be fair to treat you as a criminal. And also, the other way around, too. You can't assume that everybody in the group is the best because most of them are the best. You need to treat every individually with the same amount of respect. And if some people are cognitively no better than a pig, it doesn't seem reasonable to say that we should kill pigs, but we shouldn't kill those people. This is a Wi-Fi video. It's about 8 minutes long, but it is very convincing in terms of presenting arguments that people give to support killing animals for food, and Tyler pretty much knocks them down very gently, but it's a very good video. Is it morally permissible to kill animals for food that we don't need to eat? Well, how about if we look at it like this? Is it morally permissible to kill people for food? And then you say, well, no, that's not okay. And then we're back to, well, what's the difference, right? You say, well, they have different DNA than we do. And then I could say, or Tyler could say, cool, what if an alien species came and that alien species had different DNA from us? And the alien species wanted to eat us, and we said, please don't eat us. And they said, oh, but you're different DNA than us, so get on the plate. Again, the difference in intelligence, we're smarter than pigs or cows or lambs or anything, rabbits. But, right, it's not uniform, and there are people who are not cognitively that much higher than, say, a pig. Pigs are pretty smart. We care about people in ways that we do not care about pigs. And then Tyler suggests, what if there were a hermit living away, really far away from all people? Could we do something to him if no one cared about him? You could say, well, the pig would do it to us. If the roles were reversed, that pig would kill us in a heartbeat. Now, yeah, that's probably true, but that doesn't mean that we should do the same thing to them. And Tyler uses the example of a child biting you or kicking you in the shin or something like that. Is it morally acceptable to do the very same thing to that child? No. So if we have the capacity to make a different choice, then it's not the same. You can say, well, we're at the top of the food chain, baby, so we can do what we want. We're at the top of the food chain on land most of the time, but what if we're thrown into the middle of the ocean? We're not always on the top of the food chain. But I would go back and watch that Tyler thing. The animations are entertaining, and he's very persuasive. And this is the end of the presentation as a whole. There are a couple of videos there. Now, in a couple of weeks, I think like literally 2 weeks, you're going to write a paper on either animals, the legalization of drugs, or the death penalty. So if this topic is interesting to you in particular, you might want to check out these videos that are in this presentation to just lend more support to your arguments or to find something that's interesting to you about animals. So that's it. Hope that was helpful. I'll talk to you later, Titans. Bye.